I think what happened in my life was I experienced the spread and the evolution of the World Wide Web, and I saw it unfold in front of my own eyes, and I was completely fascinated by it.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Leumi Tech, sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Turing, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and in media partnership with C-Tech. Welcome to another episode of 20-Minute Leaders. We're welcome today with Max Rofagha, founder of Finimize, the brand helping retail investors become smarter investors through bite-sized, jargon-free, expert content. Finimize is the world's largest and most engaged finance community, with over 1 million users. Before Finimize, Max co-founded an e-commerce startup with 200 employees and sold it in 2015. He also mentors at Techstars and Startup Bootcamp and was named one of Forbes 30 under 30. Max Rofagha, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders from Switzerland. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for joining me here today. Max, you have an interesting story, and I'm excited to tell it. It's a story based on entrepreneurship. It's starting from creating a website that showcases Bart Simpson jokes, but it continues to e-commerce with 200 employees, I believe. What the hell? And then it now is with Finimize, looking at retail investors with bite-sized content. Before we dive into these separate stories, who is Max? What if you look at yourself now in Switzerland, who are you in essence?
That's a very deep question.
Oh yeah, we get deep here in the show.
Yeah, I love it. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, I would like to think of myself as an independent person. I really value independence, and I love to engage in projects that require both sides of your brain. So they require you to be analytical and creative, and that's what gives me a lot of joy. And I think in order to do that, be independent and use both sides of your brain, digital products are the fantastic playground for that. So that's what I've been doing pretty much all of my career.
And it sounds like you've been doing it before your career, already back in school. Walk me through some of the biggest projects and what you've learned. So even starting back from the website in school with Bart Simpson, how did that even begin? And looking back at it, what did it mean for you?
Yeah, so I think when I think back, basically, like I got very early exposure to computers. So my dad was always very, very, I guess, progressive. He had a laptop back in the day, and the laptop was the size of a suitcase.
Wow.
And it had like DOS on it, and had like a tiny, tiny screen and like this massive machine behind it. And so I think I've like always had this early on exposure to computers. And I think what happened in my life was I experienced the spread and the evolution of the World Wide Web, and I saw it unfold in front of my own eyes, and I was completely fascinated by it. I remember very vividly when my parents got internet connection at their house, and I remember how fascinated I was to see like websites from all over the world, and how it works, etc. And that then I think really sparked this interest and this curiosity in this whole like online world. And I just started to lean into that curiosity, and I started to look at how can I build my own website. And I started to look at how can you make your website look really cool. And so back in the day, I don't know if you remember, but like everybody had like Flash videos on their website, and like that was the fancy thing. And so I started doing a little bit of Flash videos. And it was really just all about like, can I build something out of my bedroom back then that the world can see? And I got like really excited about that idea that I can like put a website up. And then back in the day, that was like hosted on geocities.com for those of you who remember. And I mean, the thing that I kind of struggled with was like, what do I actually put on my website? Because I was a kid, I didn't really have that much to tell you. And that's what then one day it's kind of like sitting at my desk and I had this book, like the entire book was just Bart Simpson jokes. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start typing up these Bart Simpson jokes. And that's the content for my website. And that's how that started.
Amazing.
And obviously, since then, like today, my technical skills are completely out of date. But that's how it started. Yeah, it's really that, like, what I always say is like, I'm part of the generation. I'm part of the last generation that knows life consciously before the World Wide Web, before people had smartphones. And that really for me was I think a very, very crucial experience.
Yeah, I a lot of times I feel like I missed out because I think I was born 2 years too late to be with that with that generation, because I had a smartphone, I believe, already in eighth grade, and I don't think I understood life at that point. And so I kind of wish I had another couple of years to experience the real world and real human interaction that are not based on what's happening in the digital world. But from there, it doesn't stop at Bart Simpson jokes. You go and you build an e-commerce startup with 200 employees, and which also gets acquired in 2015. Is there a passion for e-commerce that leads you there? What did it even do? Why start that?
So what happened was basically I studied economics and international relations, because I was always interested in these topics. And when you do that and you're at a college or a university, all of these like big corporations come to the career fairs and are like, you need to go work for this consulting firm or this banking firm or whatever. And nobody was like, oh, you should join a startup, and so I did that for a year. I worked in a consulting firm. And the funny thing was that I actually tried to create a startup. I tried to poach one of the managing directors and do a spin-off where we would start our own consulting firm. But I realized very quickly that I'm not very passionate about consulting.
Wow.
I was more passionate about like actually creating stuff. And then I had some like friends who I've been like tinkering with on products, and like we've been like brainstorming around ideas, and they basically one day were like, hey, why don't we start an e-commerce business? And that was in the day when like daily deals were like the hot shit, and so we started that with the daily deal model, and then we very quickly expanded it into full-on e-commerce with like a warehouse and everything.
Wow. And how old are you at that point?
I was like 24, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was a crazy experience, because obviously, like, at age 24, I didn't know anything. And I learned everything by doing, right? Like I have zero background in retail. And to answer your question, I also had like no real passion about retail. If anything, I thought it was a bit boring.
Wow. Maybe that's why I wanted to fix it.
Exactly. But I also was fascinated by and really excited actually about like the idea of building a company and building a company that reaches a lot of people. And that's I think where the excitement came from. And we did that, and that grew super quickly and was really, really fun and a lot of work. And now with Finimize, it's like, it's a real passion project for me. But again, I also never thought I would get into finance, or I would get into like the media world. A lot of this, I always try to like go with the flow.
Right.
And I think then a lot of opportunities open up if you go with the flow.
So walk me through Finimize and some of the thinking behind that. You have more than 1 million users. You're talking about a finance community. What does that actually mean, and what is the pain point that you're observing that Finimize is coming to solve?
So I'm sure everybody by now has been following what's been happening in the retail investment space, right? Where more retail investors than ever have entered the market. And that is because the barriers to entry have been radically lowered. So commission-free trading, fractional shares. You can now buy not an Amazon share costs thousands of dollars.
Yep.
You can buy part of it for $100. All of these things helped the normal retail investor enter the market. And so last year in the US alone, 10 million new retail investors entered the market. And then in Q1, all of the major brokers are reporting that they grew faster than all of 2020.
Wow.
So there's this like massive acceleration happening. And so there's a lot of talk about democratizing financial markets. And I think the thing that we're now starting to see is that in order to democratize financial markets, it's not just about the infrastructure that we just talked about. It's also about where do people get their information from?
Yeah.
And what happens today is that all of the existing financial information outlets are super expensive. And if you want to put down that amount of money, are really difficult to keep up to date with and to wrap your head around. And that's created the vacuum. And so people have been turning to free sources like TikTok. You have all these like pseudo finance gurus on TikTok, and who are trying to tell you this is the next altcoin and put all of your money on this, etc. And then you have obviously the rise of Reddit, etc. And our belief is that while there's still a lot of interesting stuff there, but that there's a vacuum there where people are looking for high quality investing information that they can turn to and that they can trust. Trust is so important in finance. And we with Finimize are trying to fill that vacuum, an affordable, high quality and finance portal that caters to the modern investor. And the modern investor has 3 attributes that we cater to with our product. Number 1, they learn by doing. So that's why they, for example, do a lot of fractional shares. Number 2, they're very time poor. So everything we do is bite-sized. And number 3, they are very community driven. Yeah. So over 90% can report that when they make an investment decision, they consult their peers.
Yeah.
And that's why we're very community driven. And that's what really the way we think about it. We're a modern financial information platform and community.
I mean, that's very interesting. I can think through some friends that, whenever they purchase or sell, it becomes a topic of conversation. And I think one of the things that we're all feeling is that, but we're talking about it, but we're lacking some important information. And yeah, we don't want to go and now explore and understand everything about this market and about this company, but if we had, snippets of information that enabled us to elevate the conversation a little bit, that is definitely something that could be very, very meaningful.
Yeah.
And so now you're with Finimize, you have 1 million users. Where do you see it? Where do you see it grow? Where do you see it progress? It's, I believe, 4 or 5 years old. Where is both, the retail investment, the retail investors market heading, and where is Finimize heading alongside that?
And so I think that this modern retail investor is here to stay. And so I think you're going to start to see a lot more products that cater to these 3 attributes that I just mentioned. And we're obviously want to be, continue to be at the forefront of that. And the way that we really want to develop is we want to build products that help our users and prospective users along their investment journey.
Right.
Right. And so like getting your information is one thing. How do you do your research is another thing. How do you figure out where to go is another thing. And so today we do like a little slice of that, and we want to completely own that experience so that we become that trusted source that you can turn to when you go out and want to make a financial decision.
And so in your eyes, what is the biggest hurdle in that vision, in that journey that you're on?
I think at the end of the day, there's two things. Number one, there's a lot of competition, obviously, entering the market. And so you have to build really, really good products. And number two is there in the finance space, and we're seeing this right now as well, there's a huge recency bias that people have. Oh, I did this went up massively, like this. If I do this again, this is going to go up massively. And that's not the way the markets work. And so it's this constant balancing act of trying to help people understand what's happening, also talking about what's in sort of the quote unquote pop culture of finance, like all the GMEs of the world, but also recognizing, that that's not everything, and having a very healthy balance between good principles, good coverage, but also covering what people are talking about.
Right. I think honestly, just looking at the market and where it's heading and understanding the growth that it's in, it sounds like you're in the right market at the right time. From playing around with the product, it looks like it's an amazing product. And I, as somebody who needs this product, I'm excited to start using it myself. And I really want to thank you for coming here. And I know that you're very, very busy now. I appreciate it. I have a few questions, not about e-commerce or startups or anything like that. I want to talk about you with 3 questions if you have 2 minutes.
Yes, let's
do it. Favorite subject in middle school or high school?
So like I said, I went to go on to study international relations and economics, and I always was really fascinated by international affairs. And I took a sort of advanced course in school on politics, and I loved that.
Amazing. Somebody who's a role model, somebody that inspires you.
I wouldn't say I have like one role model per se. What I do is I read up a lot on entrepreneurs and business people. I love reading their biographies and autobiographies. And then I kind of like draw my own lessons and takeaways from anybody from like Phil Knight with his Nike book to I recently read a book about Michael Bloomberg, read a book about the founder of Creative Artists. Amazing. So I read all these like biographies and I found it fascinating to hear about their lives and how they went about building their businesses. And I try and take some of the learnings from that.
Very, very cool. And what are 3 words that you would use to describe yourself?
I think number one, I would say I have a very high level of persistence or grit, whatever you want to call it. So I think I continue where a lot of other people would have given up. I love to embrace originality. So for example, when we build product, I really am not a fan of like Me Too kind of copycat products that I think you're starting to see a lot of. So originality, I think, is really core to what I try to do. And then I guess the third one would be sort of, I don't know if there's a word for it, but sitting at an intersection of like creative and analytical. I don't think there's a word, but I think that's a nice balance.
Analytical. I'll take that.
Exactly.
Max, thank you very, very much. Stay safe and stay healthy. Best of luck with Finimize, and I have a feeling that you're going to have a few more ventures down the line. So best of luck with those in advance as well. Thank you for coming here. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.